We extract the crucial insights.
That's the idea.
Today, we're tackling something pretty concerning. The spread of fake news, disinformation, really, originating from Indian media, especially during conflicts with Pakistan.
Yeah, it's a heavy topic. The report you sent, India-Pakistan conflict, digital deception and media integrity, is quite detailed.
Exactly. That's our main source. Our mission today is to understand the scale, the tactics, the impact, particularly looking at the May 2025 hostilities.
And drawing parallels with 2019, the Pulwama-Balakot incident, which the report also covers.
Right. We've got media reports, fact checks, international watchdog stuff, and that big EU Disinfo Lab report, Indian Chronicles. Lots to unpack.
Definitely.
And for you, our listener, we know you want to get up to speed quickly but thoroughly, so we'll give you that clear picture without, getting lost in the weeds.
So where do we start? The digital aspect seems key.
Yes. The report kicks off by saying conflict isn't just physical anymore. It's about narrative control, perception management.
And digital platforms are the main arenas for that now. It's information warfare, essentially.
Okay, so let's clarify terms first, like the report does. Misinformation versus disinformation. What's the difference we need to keep in mind?
It's crucial. Misinformation is basically spreading false stuff unintentionally.
Yeah.
An honest mistake, maybe you share something you thought was true.
Okay.
Disinformation, though, that's the deliberate creation and spread of false information. The intent is to mislead. It's calculated.
Got it. Accidental versus deliberate. And the report says the fog of war during conflict makes things worse.
Absolutely. Information is scarce, emotions run high, people are desperate for news. It creates this vacuum.
That disinformation just rushes in to fill.
Exactly. And if official sources are slow or unclear, it just makes it easier for these false narratives to take root.
Which brings us to something quite stark. In the report, pro-government voices in India apparently framing these disinformation efforts as electronic warfare.
Yeah, that framing elevates it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Creates it like a national security strategy, blurring lines between military action and, well, manipulating your own public sometimes.
That's a disturbing thought. So let's look at May 2025. The report highlights a massive surge in this stuff. What role did Indian media play?
A huge role, according to the report. Major Indian media outlets were significantly involved in pushing fake narratives, broadcasting unverified claims as fact.
Giving them that false credibility?
Precisely. We saw some really blatant examples of misleading footage.
Yeah, like using video from totally different conflicts. Israel-Gaza, Lebanon, and passing it off as Indian strikes on Pakistan.
Yes, that's documented. A major breach of basic journalistic ethics, frankly.
And the specific claims are just staggering.
They really are. The report lists them. Times Now, Nav Harat saying Indian forces entered Pakistan. Z News claiming Islamabad was captured. Pakistan surrendered.
Captured Islamabad? Seriously?
That's what was reported. Then Aj Tak had false reports of suicide attacks on the Indian army. The army itself had to deny those later.
It doesn't stop there, does it? What about the Pakistani army leadership?
Right. India TV, ABP News, Z News, all falsely reported. Pakistan's army chief, Munir, was dismissed or arrested.
Just completely fabricated.
Seems so. India Today claimed an attack on Karachi. ABP Ananda used an old plane crash clip to show Karachi port supposedly destroyed.
Wow.
Republic Bangla declared Pakistan will be finished today. India News claimed Lahore was captured. NDTV even had a false report about Pakistani tanks heading to Rajasthan they later took down.
And claims of 12 cities captured, the PM hiding. It's like a fantasy narrative.
Completely detached from reality based on the fact checks and subsequent information.
The report calls this the sensationalism credibility paradox. What does that mean in this context?
It's this idea that media outlets chasing ratings, TRPs, might prioritize sensational, unverified news just to be first or loudest.
Even if it damages their credibility long term.
Exactly. You get a short-term bump, maybe, but you erode trust. And constantly bombarding the public with this stuff can desensitize people, make it harder to tell fact from fiction.
Leads to anxiety, irrational behavior.
Yeah, I can see that. And the tactics are evolving too, beyond just old footage.
Oh, definitely. We saw weaponized video game footage in 2025, edited with music and text to look like real combat. That got huge traction.
Video game footage.
Yes. But the big leap, the really worrying one, is AI. Artificial intelligence.
Deepfakes.
Deepfakes, yes. Fake videos of a Pakistani military spokesperson. And audio deepfakes, really convincing ones, of Pakistan's PM Shahbaz Sharif and a senior military figure supposedly admitting jet losses.
How convincing are we talking?
The report mentioned nearly perfect lip sync in one case. That tells you how fast the tech is moving. Detection is struggling to keep up.
That's scary. A whole new level of deception. Now, to be balanced, the report does mention Pakistani media wasn't entirely clean either. It does. It notes Pakistani outlets also push baseless narratives claiming to shoot down Indian drones, denying civilian deaths, that sort of thing, portraying Pakistan as a heroic victim while denying terror links. So, manipulation wasn't just one-sided.
Okay, important context. But the report seems to focus heavily on the impact of the Indian-originated disinformation.
Yes, because the scale detailed seems significant. It clearly fueled anxiety and misinformation inside India. The timing often looks strategic, aimed at escalating tensions, justifying actions.
And making confrontation more likely?
Plausibly, yes, and undermining Pakistani morale, inflating Indian victory narratives.
And critically, the report suggests a lot of this wasn't even aimed outward at Pakistan or the world, but inward at the Indian population.
That's a key point. It quotes Pratik Sinha from Alt News, saying both countries basically waged disinformation warfare against its people, using it to ramp up nationalism, manufacture consent for conflict.
Using your own people as the target. Grim. What about pushback? Fact-checking.
There were efforts. Alt News, the Quint, others worked hard debunking things. The Indian government's Press Information Bureau, the PIB, made claims of countering things. The Army issued denials. The Home Ministry even put out an advisory on air raid sirens.
But could they keep up?
That's the problem. The report highlights the asymmetry, the sheer volume, speed, sophistication, especially with AI. It just overwhelms the fact-checkers. It's an uphill battle.
And what about the Indian government's role in tackling domestic disinformation, the stuff from its own media?
That's where the report raises serious questions. It suggests a selective approach. The government seemed active in countering narratives from Pakistan.
But less so with the pro-government disinformation coming from major Indian channels.
Much less so, according to the analysis,
Okay.
which implies, a potential bias, ignoring or maybe even implicitly supporting narratives that align with their agenda. Disinformation as a political tool.
Okay, let's just back to 2019. Pulwama-Balakot. The report calls this a precedent. How so?
It really set the stage for the hyper-partisan media environment, that kind of militant nationalism we saw amplified later.
What did that look like back then?
Sensationalism dialed way up. TV channels showing simulated dogfights, CGI airstrikes. It blurred news and, frankly, propaganda.
And silencing critics.
Aggressively. Anyone questioning the official story or asking for proof was quickly labeled anti-national. Shouted down, basically.
But the most alarming thing from 2019, highlighted in the report, involves Facebook's fact-checkers.
Yes, this was deeply troubling. 3 of Facebook's designated fact-checking partners in India Today, Ganex Chagrin, Newsmobile, were themselves found circulating misinformation after Pulwama.
The fact-checkers spread fake news.
Or failed to correct it adequately, yes.
Correct.
It points to a massive systemic issue. If the organizations meant to verifying information are part of the problem, who do you trust?
It completely erodes trust. What specific examples did they give for these outlets?
The India Today group used a 2017 video for the Balakot strike, reportedly didn't take it down, used a photoshopped image of a slain terrorist, prematurely reported 300 terrorists killed, way before any confirmation.
300. That number popped up a lot.
It did. Their channel Aj Tak used an old crash photo for downed planes, changed it later without saying why. Dainik Jagran also splashed the unverified 300 figure on its front page, ran misleading articles.
And Newsmobile.
Also reported the unverified 300 deaths. And, ironically for a fact-checker, the report notes they publish astro predictions, which doesn't exactly scream credibility, does it?
No, it really doesn't. And the timing again. 2019 was an election year in India.
Impossible to ignore the context. The Balakot strike, the media frenzy just months before the general election. The report strongly suggests disinformation was used strategically.
To mobilize support.
To mobilize support for the ruling party, whip up nationalist sentiment, delegitimize the opposition, silence any criticism, using national security events for political gain.
And the impact on society sounds like it created a really toxic environment.
Very much so. It successfully rallied support, yes, but it also meant anyone asking questions, even grieving students, faced harassment, arrests. Calling for proof was treated like treason. The state's narrative became paramount.
So a pattern of behavior. How did the international community react to all this, particularly the media conduct?
There was widespread international criticism, especially after 2019 and again in 2025. Commentators, press freedom groups called it a national embarrassment.
Strong words.
Very. Accusations that it undermined journalism, misled the public, Some drew parallels to state propaganda. It definitely damaged the reputation of Indian media internationally.
And press freedom rankings reflect these concerns.
They do. The report cites several. VDEM Institute calling India one of the worst autocratizers. Freedom House rating India partly free. Reporters Without Borders ranking India really low, 151 out of 180.
How does the Indian government respond to those rankings?
Generally dismisses them as motivated or biased, but the consistency across different watchdog groups is notable.
And during the May 2025 conflict, we saw actual censorship too, blocking accounts.
Yes, quite significantly. X, or Twitter, was forced by the Indian government to block thousands of accounts, including international news outlets, journalists, activists.
Did X push back?
They publicly disagreed, called it an unconstitutional attack on free speech. But they complied under duress. News portals, especially in Kashmir, were suspended. A critical YouTube video blocked.
So it's that dual strategy again. Counter external narratives, suppress internal dissent.
Exactly. It seems those amplifying narratives aligned with the government face fewer consequences, maybe even get rewarded, while those doing critical reporting face censorship or worse. There was even a Defense Ministry directive against live coverage of security ops.
Okay, all these recent events. The report links them to something bigger, longer term. The Indian Chronicles investigation by EU Disinfolab, what was that about?
Indian Chronicles uncovered this vast, coordinated disinformation network that had been running for over 15 years.
15 years.
Yes, spanning 115 countries, involving over 750 fake media outlets, resurrected NGOs, fake personas, all traced back, reportedly, to a group called the Srivastava Group in Delhi.
The scale sounds enormous.
Astounding fakery, the report called it. Resurrecting dead people and organizations, impersonating legitimate media like The Economist, EU Observer, using fake addresses, fake journalists. It suggests a very sophisticated, perhaps state-linked, long-term info warfare operation.
And what was the goal of this huge network?
Primarily geopolitical, undermined Pakistan and boosted India's image and interests, especially in international forums like the EU and UN.
How did they operate in places like the EU?
They created fake parliamentary groups like a South Asia Peace Forum to influence MEPs. They used front organizations to sponsor trips, draft parliamentary questions, even created fake EU news sites like EP Today to push their narratives, often disguised as human rights advocacy.
Wow, so it wasn't just focused on South Asia.
No, it was global. Activities found in Canada, the US, Bangladesh, Maldives, Africa. EU Disinfolab gave it their highest impact rating, meaning it actually influenced policy debates and generated hostility.
Just incredible, based on website analysis mainly.
Domain names, WHOIS data, server connections, digital forensics, essentially tracing it all back.
All right.
It really shows disinformation as a long-game tool in geopolitical competition.
So wrapping this all up then, this deep dive really exposes a systemic, deeply concerning pattern of fake news and disinformation from Indian media, especially around conflicts.
Yeah, with serious consequences both inside India and internationally.
We've touched on the drivers, geopolitical tensions, domestic politics, the tech like AI and deepfakes making it easier and more dangerous.
And that worrying decline in media ethics, possibly driven by ratings pressure and maybe government favor.
Plus the international condemnation and these long-term campaigns like Indian Chronicles, it paints a pretty stark picture.
It certainly does.
And it leaves us, and you listening, with a big question, doesn't it? With operations this sophisticated, this pervasive, what does it mean for trust? Trust in media, trust between nations.
What are the long-term implications for stability? And what's our responsibility, individually and collectively, to push back against this?
Definitely something to mull over, a lot to think about beyond just this conversation. Thanks for breaking it all down.
Thank you. It's complex stuff.